Anthem's excellent shooting and fun movement system can't paper over an extremely lacking single player offering and easily one of Bioware's worst stories. The more I played Anthem, the more I was struck with how much I wanted to do with my pilot, but to say the mission structure in the game was lackluster would be an understatement. Most missions will have at least one instance of stand in this circle and wait for the bar to fill. Remember when we all made fun of Destiny 1 for having the run up to the computer and shoot for a bit while Peter Dinklage shouts at a wall? Well, apparently Bioware wasn't in on the joke because they've effectively resurrected it for 2019. Borderlands 2, a game that I love dearly, and a game that Anthem reminds me of in a few ways, has more sophisticated mission design and it was released 7 years ago. I say it reminds me of Borderlands 2 because as I was being forced to repeat a mission to complete a checklist, more on that later, I put on a podcast and just flew around and shot without having to think about it or pay any attention, much like I do in Borderlands 2, well, without the flying. I don't think it's actually a compliment to say that it's a great mindless game, but that was the impression that it gave me. The game's main story missions are also strangely thin on the ground. It feels like they were an afterthought because there's not a lot of them, and one of them is the most egregious padding I've seen in a AAA full-priced game in a while. Basically, the game grinds to a halt and forces you to finish these pointless checklists, get 50 kills with an ult, open 20 chests, run to Windsor, and it serves as a way to make the game a bit longer. But it doesn't work, it makes it unbelievably boring, and just highlights how little's actually here. And because of the checklist requirement, you're basically forced to replay the one stronghold mission you've unlocked up to that point over and over again. I played it about 5 times, and I could tell my teammates were in the same boat. We weren't even waiting for the mission to progress at that point, we would just run up to the door and emote at it like we were desperate for a piss. The unique thing that Anthem brings to the table is clearly the javelins, these Iron Man suits that serve as the game's classes. You pick your first class at the beginning of the game, and then incrementally every 6 levels or so you unlock the remaining ones to try out. However, I spent the majority of the game as the Interceptor. It has a focus on speed and an ultimate that effectively sends you spinning away like a ballet dancer of death towards your enemies. It was also the easiest to make look like a Power Ranger using the customization tools, so clearly it was the only option. You generally have 2 guns, a variety of which I personally found to be a bit lacking, and a series of abilities. It could be a grenade or an area of effect gas cloud, which allows some variety. It's not a difficult game, so until the end game content, it doesn't seem like the kind of thing that will require much trial and error. Just pick whatever you want. Who cares, I'm not your dad. The movement works really well in conjunction with the combat, especially the Interceptor. I felt incredibly fast and agile, but also like I had complete control over what I wanted to do. Being able to quickly fly out of a dangerous area to find some high ground is an integral part of what makes the combat so enjoyable, and they pulled off making you feel like a highly skilled neon pink superhero better than anything else in the game. Now you may wonder how a game from the developers of Mass Effect can be mindless, surely there's lore pouring out of every crack in the game. Well, first I would remind you that Mass Effect Andromeda exists, and then I would tell you that in reality there's pages and pages of lore. It's just a shame that it's in support of a comically shallow story. The characters are the weakest in any of their titles that I've played. There's no Garrus, there's not even the Citadel's best Garrus tribute act. I couldn't name one of the characters without really trying. The villain isn't effectively set up, and their effect in the world isn't clear. You basically never see them outside of the cutscenes. And the dramatic beats are unearned, and isn't it ironic that in the follow-up to Mass Effect they have a twist that's visible from space? The conversations in the game are all first person, which makes the whole thing feel like the least funny episode of Peep Show ever. What makes it more puzzling is you pick a face for your character at the start of the game and you only see it in a handful of cutscenes. There are dialogue options, but it seems to change absolutely nothing. All the characters are so lifeless. The hub city feels like a broken Disney attraction with loads of animatronics. They aren't even really interacting with each other, they just seem to stand there until you go and talk to them. It's as if when you're away they just power down and wait for you to walk back into the room. It's weirdly empty. There are multiple shops that sell the same thing literally feet from each other. It just feels like padding. The whole game feels like they finished the unique content and then realised how little was here and just picked missions at random to double or extend by putting objectives miles across the map from each other for no reason. The world is beautiful, the game looks really expensive, but the sense of wonder you feel when you first start to fly around is quickly brought crashing to earth with the lack of variety between areas. There's a strangely low invisible ceiling that stops you from getting too far away, and while I didn't expect to be able to fly to the sun, it feels less like an open world and more like a geodesic dome based on Pandora from the Avatar quintology. The open world is even less impressive when you start to realise how many of the areas are behind load screens, which are insanely long, over 2.5 minutes at times, and that's on a PC that was capable of running the game on high with several settings at ultra. I can only assume it has to do with the way the game handles co-op matchmaking, which is its own hilarious problem. Missions are expected to be played in groups of 4, however if one of the 4 loads in first, then starts flying in the direction of the objective, the rest of the team will be bombarded with a message to rejoin the group or you'll be teleported there. It's not fun being tethered to your teammates like a petulant child that can't be trusted to find a way. Another fun side effect of having to play the game with randos is that they seem to have the same level of commitment to the narrative as Bioware has. For example, during one of the game's climactic cutscenes, one of the players decided to skip it, so of course it was skipped for the entire group. I just had to laugh. It was the most entertaining thing that happened in the story up till that point. I think modern games have gotten far too comfortable with the idea of releasing something for full price without enough content to justify it, then selling that content they ripped out a year later in an expansion that actually makes the game good. Bioware had the chance to be the exception, but now the perception that they were just chasing Destiny's tail is solidified, even copying the unbelievably shallow single player offering. And it's a shame because the shooting is excellent, the flying is really fun, and the javelins are just novel. But what's there at launch is so thin on the ground I can't possibly recommend you jump in now. Maybe wait a while, because all the expansions are supposed to be free, so eventually there will be a respectable amount of single player content there. But what's there just now just feels antiquated, outdated, and rushed. It's a new game, but it all feels old. I knew I'd get a good Charlotte reference in there before the end. I'm Jordan Midler. See you later.